This happened to me a couple of years ago. I was going to turn 17. It was something so strange and terrifying at the same time that I still can't understand it completely. There is a part of me that still refuses to accept that what I lived it was real. But you judge. All this started when my parents told us that we would visit Aunt Loop and Uncle Manuel, my dad's older brother. The following weekend, he lives in a ranch very close to Jalapa, Veracruz. Neither my sister nor I had the pleasure of meeting them in person. Only we had seen in the old photographs that my father sometimes showed us his family, whom we hardly visited precisely because they were very retired. At first, I didn't like the idea very much. I had training on Saturday in the morning, and in the afternoon, I would see my boyfriend. But I knew that my parents really wanted to go, so I cancelled my commitments. Just like that. That weekend arrived, we put our suitcases in the car and went to our uncle's house. The ranch was on a hill. To get there, we still had to climb a hill, narrow path, a yellow dirt. The car fit well, but it was a bit dangerous on the side of the ravine, which led to a river. Although I had to admit that the view from there was spectacular. As soon as we parked in front of the ranch, my uncles came out to greet us. My Aunt Lou was short, her hair was all grey, and her features were sweet. She smiled at us. When she saw us and my parents ran hug her. My uncle Manuel was a tall and a serious man. He didn't look like he was 70 years old. He looked very whole for his age. He gave us a hurried hug. That afternoon, after eating, they spent the whole time talking. I stayed with my parents for a while, and then we went out to collect firewood in the surrounding area to make a bonfire. As soon as it got dark, we all went to sit around the fire. My Aunt Loop had prepared champorado, and there we all walked with our jugs serving us. The night seemed very calm, but then howls began to be heard in the distance among the hills that surrounded the ranch. At that moment, I realized that my uncle stirred restlessly. The howls became the continued listening for another few minutes, and then they fell silent. Even so, my uncle Manuel got up from his chair, hurried into the house, and when he returned with us, he had a rifle on his shoulder. When my father saw him, he said he commented that maybe that animal had already left because it was no longer listening. The uncle told him that he was sure that this animal would come, but that this time it would not catch him off guard. It would be his revenge, and he continued long toward the corrals. We stood looking at each other without understanding what he meant by the revenge. After a while, we saw him leave there and head towards the fields that were at the back of the corral. The house, we just watched it in silence from the bonfire. It was then that Aunt Loop told us that Hole was apparently from a nahual, and that Uncle Manuel had already faced it on other occasions, but that he always escaped with one of his animals, and that he had already made it personal because a few weeks ago that animal had tried to enter the house when we were away, and when he couldn't, it had stolen a sheep and had destroyed part of the cornfield. My sister and I were looking at each other, surprised. My father and mother commented to the aunt that all that about the Nahuals were just legends for scare people. What could be is that there was a wolf out there looking for something to eat. At that moment, the guy came back. He seemed more serious than we were used to and told us that it was best we had to go into the house. Neither my parents nor my grandmother gave any objections. We went in so quickly that we didn't even put out the campfire. As soon as we entered, they sent us to the room they had given us to sleep in. But more, it took us a while to go to bed than to get up scared. Outside, we could hear a lot of commotion from the side of the corrals. When we left the room still, we could hear Uncle Manuel cursing his luck, and how the door was slammed. When we got to the room was only my mother and Aunt Loop. We didn't know what to do at the moment when suddenly we heard several gunshots. We were scared. The grandmother told us not to be scared, that the most likely thing is that the uncle had shot into the air to scare the nahual. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere becomes more tense. Suddenly, the door opened with a bang. It was my father. His leg was dragging. We ran to help him. Between my sister and I sat him in the nearest chair, big room in the room. He was bleeding a lot. Aunt Loop grabbed one of the bottles of mezcal that she had on a shelf, opened it, and poured part of the contents into the wound. Even though he tried to hold on, my dad gave an impressive scream and fainted. My mother, all distraught, asked her aunt where we could go to get him treated. Aunt Luke told us that only as far as the town, that there we could find a doctor. My mom woke up my dad with a pat on the face, and my sister and I helped him get to the car. But we had barely been able to get in when we heard gunshots and a horrible scream again. Until that moment, we remembered the uncle again. Manuel. I told my mother and my sister to take my father to the doctor, that I would go look for Uncle Manuel. My mother started the car and got lost on the sidewalk. At that moment, I saw Aunt Loop come out with a shotgun in her hands. She was ready to look for the uncle. I stopped her and I almost had to snatch the gun from her. And then I ran towards the corrals. To the when I entered, I got an unbearable smell that almost made me vomit. Since it was very dark, I stepped on something slippery on the floor and fell flat. I took out my phone and turned on the lamp. I wouldn't have done it. In front of me there was a butchered animal, and what I had stepped on was its blood spread all over the floor. I got up as best I could, horrified, and when I left, I had to stop because I started vomiting. At that moment,